Bom dia. Unfortunately, this is the only thing I can say in Portuguese. I'm very sorry. I can sing A Garota do Ipanema if you like. I'm just kidding. Thank you very much for being here. I would like to especially thank the Dean of the University, Fernando, to give us the opportunity to present our case here. I would like to thank especially Francisco, who has been a wonderful host so far. Do you all understand me clearly? If I speak too fast, please give me a sign. You just make this and I'll try to slow down, okay? Okay, so thank you very much. My name is Robert Fleischer. I have been the founder and coordinator of Exopolitics, the Exopolitics citizen movement of Germany. I used to work for television, so my background is I'm a TV journalist. I studied conference interpreting, by the way, for French, Spanish, and I also speak Italian and English, which is quite helpful when we deal with a subject that has been ignored by the mass media worldwide, especially in Germany. When we deal, and I'm very happy that I have the occasion to present my case as one of the first speakers, because I would like to seize the opportunity to give you a general overview of what we're dealing with worldwide, and I hope my presentation doesn't interfere too much with the other presentations. We will just see that. So when the question about extraterrestrial life, the extraterrestrial presence on Earth, always starts with a simple question, because normally nobody thinks about UFOs, extraterrestrials, until they ask themselves a question. What in the world is this? What is this? Is it a sketch from a child? Is it some pure fantasy or something? It is no fantasy. What you see here is the sketch of an official police report from Great Britain, which was drawn by two police constables, Police Constable 657 and Police Constable 541, who watched this object through binoculars on April 26, 1984. As you can see, it has blue, white, and lights there, red light there, white, here it says white, blue, green, pink, red lights. This is the sketch from the official police report, the British police. You can download the file. As you can see, I will present you the sources as well, so you can check the sources for yourself if you don't believe me. This is the report about it. Both officers accompanied Mrs. and Miss into the rear garden of their house, where they pointed east towards a flashing light approximately 45 degrees up in the sky from where they were standing. The officers obtained a pair of binoculars and studied the object through them, and saw that the object was circular in shape, and in the middle with a dome on the top and underneath. The middle of the object had blue lights around the middle and red-pink lights on the extreme right of the middle. The dome on the top and blue and white flashing lights. The dome underneath was blue, green, and red, pink, white, with white flashes. They observed this object for an hour, and during this time the object moved erratically from one side to the other, up and down and to and fro, not venturing far from its original position. This case, by the way, ended with the object zipping towards the people who had gathered there to see the object, you know, and it made like, and it was gone. And this is part of an official police report which was released by the British National Archives in 2008. Something that we never hear on the mass media, at least not in Germany, when it comes to UFOs. Ask yourself, which natural phenomenon could be responsible for this? As for Germany, UFOs officially don't exist in Germany. What you see here is a picture of a Minister of Interior Affairs. He says, "There is no federal authority or institution that registers, evaluates, or deals with alleged sightings of unknown flying objects." So he doesn't even have the definition right, because it's not unknown flying object. Actually, if we think about the definition, unknown flying or unidentified flying object, it is a definition that actually doesn't say anything. Because to be honest, we don't know anything about these objects. We do know some things about them. You know, it's unidentified flying object. We don't know whether it's an object because some of these things seem to be intelligent plasma life forms which do not have a sharp structure. And we don't know whether they are flying or floating or just appearing in the sky. The only thing that we know about these objects is that they are unidentified. So in Germany, unlike in many other countries, UFOs is not a topic that you can discuss at all. It's not like in other countries where you have files or anything, where you have the Ministry of Defense or the National Archive releasing files. You have nothing. You have ridicule. You have, your career as a scientist is very likely to end when you start to engage in the subject of UFOs. That is why I'm so happy to have the chance to present this case here at the University of Fernando Pessoa. Sometimes there are members of the German Bundestag, which is the federal parliament, the highest parliament in Germany, who are interested in the subject, and then they ask questions like this. This is an official inquiry to the German government from 2009, how the federal government estimates the probability that there is intelligent extraterrestrial life, and how does the German federal government estimate the probability that extraterrestrials might land on German territory one day? And here's the answer from the German government. The German federal government does not have any knowledge which would allow to estimate the probability of the reality of extraterrestrial life. However, given current scientific knowledge, the likelihood of a landing of extraterrestrials on German territory is considered out of the question. Out of the question. So I have to tell you honestly, you know, when every 4 years when I go to the elections and I make my cross somewhere, you know, I do trust that the people that I elect, that they are in the loop, that they know what they are talking about. But obviously, in this case, it's not so. It's not the case. They don't know what they are talking about. They are just not, they refer to the current scientific knowledge, and they have no clue. Look at this. A CIA document from 1952 openly discussing a UFO landing in Germany. In East Germany, by the way, where I was born, in the communist part of Germany, East Germany. So this landing occurred on the German border in 1952. A former mayor of a small town in Thüringen, that's the state of Thüringen, he witnessed, together with his daughter, something that he described like a landed frying pan. He saw beings. They approached the object slowly, carefully. They didn't want to be seen by these beings. They approached the object. Then there was a crack from behind because the daughter made some noise. The beings saw Mr. Oscar Linke, that's his name, and his daughter, and they jumped into their craft. The craft lifted up, and it zipped away. And this is what this CIA document talks about back in 1952. So how come the German government says in 2009, so many years later, that they consider it out of the question that there would ever occur a landing of UFOs on German territory? If there's really life in the universe, other life, wouldn't our scientists already have discovered it? Meet Professor Frank Drake. Do you know him, Frank Drake? Do you know he's the senior astrophysicist and founder of the SETI project, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. He's also the founder of the Drake equation. And this is the Drake equation. The Drake equation is an equation where you can insert the most conservative astrophysical variables, numbers, in order to estimate the number of civilizations in our galaxy which might be advanced enough to be in contact with us, to communicate with us. So you have the number of planets, the distance to the star that the planet circles around, And if you put all of the most, I repeat, the most conservative astrophysical variables that astrophysics knows, if you put them into this equation and you make the calculation, then the result is, at best, there are 150 communicating civilizations in our galaxy, and at least one. That's only in our galaxy, the Milky Way. So there are many galaxies in the universe. So you see the probability, just from the most conservative scientific point of view, the probability that there is intelligent extraterrestrial life which could engage in communication with mankind is practically 100%. Now, this result encouraged Mr. Drake, Professor Drake, and his team to try to communicate with the extraterrestrials themselves. And back in the 60s, they started a program, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and they sent a message from this radio telescope. It is a huge telescope. It is 300 meters diameter, as you can see. It's a huge telescope. And they used this telescope to send a binary message. This is the binary message. I'll just explain it to you shortly. It consists of 1,679 binary units. So binary is either 0 or 1, okay? And 1,679 is the product of 23 times 73. So these are two prime numbers. So the scheme that you get when you divide, you can only divide 1,679 by 23 or 73, and you will receive this pattern, okay? This grid. So let's say this is a 0 and this is a 1. And in this thing, they encoded the numbers from atomic numbers of key biological elements, the chemical formula for sugar and bases of our DNA nucleotides, DNA double helix, as you can see. Maybe the most prominent feature is the human shape, just to show how we look like, what's the shape of the Earthlings. You can even see here, this is the solar system with 9 planets, with the Earth highlighted as the 3rd planet from the Sun, And this is the Arecibo telescope, which is also encoded in this message to show the extraterrestrials what the thing we used in order to send the message. And then they listened and they listened and they listened with their radio telescope, and they did not receive anything, not even 1 bit. But in August of 2001, something interesting happened in England, Chilbolton. That's where all of these crop formations appear each year. Have you ever been to England? Have you ever seen the crop formations yourself? Yes? It's impressive, isn't it? It's so impressive. So this is where the crop formation, a crop formation appeared, right next to a radio telescope, by the way. And I found out that this radio telescope was even involved in the SETI project. So it was even part of the SETI project. And if we have a closer look on this crop formation, you can see that it looks quite similar to the original message, which you can see here. The most prominent difference is, of course, the figure, the shape of this, of these beings. Now, what's interesting is also that they changed the double helix. Now it's a triple helix, and it is based on silicon, which is interesting. Because recently scientists are thinking that life might also be based on silicon, not just on carbon like on our planet, but might be based on silicon as well. So I found this quite impressive. You know, I thought, wow, is this the answer? Is this probably the answer to what Professor Frank Drake had been looking for all the time? You know, and I was dying to ask him that, because SETI never actually said anything about this formation, even though it was close to a radio telescope, and even though you can hardly deny that there is, you know, that it has something to do with this, you know. So I was very happy that I had the chance to meet Frank Drake personally. In May 2009. I sneaked into an astrophysics symposium at the University of Potsdam in Germany, and I even managed to bring Professor Frank Drake in front of my camera, which is now standing behind there. Don't ask me how I did that. And I asked him that. I just wanted to know what is his answer there. Now, here's his answer. How do you know that an alien civilization would like to use a radio signal to communicate?
Well, actually, the universe has made it so that radio is the preferred method for interstellar communication. And the reason for that is that in space there are natural sources of what we call noise or static, which interfere with our communication systems. And when that noise and static is very intense, it takes a much more powerful, a larger, more expensive telescope to create a communication link. Well, it turns out the universe is darkest and quietest at the radio wavelengths we call microwaves. We know that, the extraterrestrials will know that. It's not hard to know this. And they, like us, will exploit these frequencies for very long distance communication. All of our communications to spacecraft, for instance, are done using microwave wavelengths. The transmission of television programs to people's homes from satellites are set on these same wavelengths because you can get the signals with a small dish on your house, and it doesn't take much power from the satellite to send the television programs to you. So that's why we favor searching for signals at the microwave wavelengths. First, we can detect the messages they use for their own purposes more easily there because the universe is dark and doesn't interfere. Secondly, if they are intentionally sending us signals, they will use these frequency bands because they will know that those are the bands where their signals will be most detectable and where we're likely to be searching.
Now, there are some people who say that the answer to the Arecibo message might have already actually come back to Earth. I don't know if you've heard of this. This is a formation that that appeared in 2001 near a radio telescope in England, and there is a more detailed one here. And I have also this is some private researcher who put this. You see, could you hold that in the camera? Let's compare that. Now, it's really interesting to note that if you see the red, you see the figure man. It's a little gray. And what do you think of that? Is it like an homage to your, or do you think it's possible that this could possibly be the message, the answer to your message?
I think there is no chance whatsoever that this is a legitimate message. It's some kind of joke or a fun thing, or maybe a challenge that somebody made to one another, to somebody to do. And there are two reasons for this, good reasons. One is the version of the message they have here, which I'm about to hold up here. Contains in it information that's clearly wrong, like such as the structure of the DNA molecule, and some of the other parts of this message make no sense whatsoever or are chemically impossible. The other is that, as we saw in the original picture, this message appeared about 100 meters away from a radio telescope. Now, if you had come to Earth to deliver a message, you would have gone to the door of the radio telescope and knocked on the door and given them one of your books or something. You wouldn't have gone out in a cornfield and spent a great deal of effort cutting down stalks of corn.
Right, but how do you know? I mean, how do you know how the aliens think,
Well, what I do know is that they're intelligent.
Yeah.
Because they somehow got to Earth, if this is really from an alien. And they will know better than to try to communicate with humans in this ridiculous way.
So you see, Professor Dr. Frank Drake has obviously traveled around a lot in the universe. He has had breakfast with people from Zeta Reticuli. He visited a pop concert on Venus. He talked to a lot of people in the universe, because otherwise he wouldn't be able to say how the extraterrestrials would communicate with humans, right? He said, if these extraterrestrials, if this message was really from extraterrestrials, they wouldn't have done this in the crop field. They would have gone to the door of the radio telescope, knocked on the door, and would have given them a book of them or something. That's what he said. So what we just saw is actually a demonstration of anthropocentric behavior. That's how we call it. Or otherwise, if I can't imagine it, I'm human, I cannot imagine that the extraterrestrials would communicate with us in this way. If they want to communicate, they have to communicate the way I imagine them to communicate, And this is anthropocentric, We project our own imagination of what they should be like onto the extraterrestrials, and that is why it seems to be so ridiculous. Or to put it in another way, I think this is a little like the situation we have on our Earth, Can you imagine the evolutionary difference between a fish and a man? The fish. For the fish, his world is round and perfect. Everything is great. Sometimes, and also, they swim around in circles in the fish tank. That's why there is a sign this way. It's like us on Earth. We go to work every day. We come back at home, tired. We see the world in 15 minutes, TV, world news report, and then we go to bed, and the next morning the same thing again. So, by the way, did you know that a fish is supposed to have a memory capacity of only 2 seconds? So that means that, the fish tank never becomes boring for the fish, Just does a circle and says, oh, since when is there a sign here? Oh, have you seen the sign before? Oh, there's a sign, look, But sometimes one fish sticks its nose on the glass and says, do you think there might be something else out there? And the other fish go, oh, bullshit, come on. go, keep on doing your circles. And that's the situation on our planet. But just to give you the context, the universal context, just, according to conventional astrophysics, conservative mainstream astrophysics, the universe was created 13.7 billion years ago with a big explosion, and it was there. I'm not going to dig into that, but you can imagine that. Anyway, so it took another couple of billion years until the Earth formed, 4.6 billion years ago. And then from the development of the Earth 4.6 billion years ago until the appearance of intelligent life, it took 4.598 billion years. So the first intelligent life, as we define it, only appeared on Earth 2 million years ago. So just look at this vast difference of time. Earth formed 4.6 billion years ago, but the universe is much older. So that means that Earth could have formed, another Earth could have formed billions of years ago, even farther in the past. And those beings could have evolved much, much more than we are evolved right now. They could be billions of years ahead of our evolution. And I once spoke to an astrophysicist who must not be named. That's very interesting when scientists call me and they want to congratulate me or say, yeah, I want to participate in the Exopolitics movement. But the first thing they say is, don't say a word. Don't say that I called you. Don't mention my name. It could cost me my career, my university career. So he said, just imagine the evolutionary difference between us and something that is evolved 1 billion years ahead of us. Just try to imagine that. It's impossible to imagine because we don't know where we will be in 1 billion years. But we can try to remember where we were 1 billion years ago. And that was unicellular life forms that were swimming around in the soup, It's like single-cell organisms. Now imagine the evolutionary difference between a multicellular organism like the human being and a one-cell organism that was floating around on the Earth 1 billion years ago. That is the evolutionary difference that we are talking about. And then just imagine 1.5 billion years ago, we learned how to control fire. 6,000 years ago only, we created the wheel. 190 years ago, we invented the light bulb. Wow, now, this is what we've been having for only 200 years. 140 years ago, we created the first telephone. 115 years ago, we invented the first radio connection. So that's interesting. The first radio connection, I'll come back to that later. 180 years ago, the first motorized plane worldwide. Only 70 years ago, we invented the first computer, and only 50 years ago, the first man went into space. So can you imagine that an extraterrestrial being, which might possibly be 1 billion years ahead in its evolution, will use radio signals to communicate with us? Now that we have only been doing this for 115 years, 115 years is nothing. My grandmother didn't have a TV set. And now we suspect that the aliens will communicate with us with radio signals. It's like the indigenic people with their smoke signs. Do you think there is life beyond our mountain? No, if there was life beyond our mountain, we would have seen the smoke signs. So this is just to put into perspective. But now I want to get to the facts. Where are the facts when we talk about extraterrestrial presence on Earth? Because the extraterrestrial presence on Earth, that, assumes quite a lot, that they are here, that they're intelligent, and that we have proof. Well, first thing you need to know is that the UFO phenomenon has been documented, often in classified documents, classified files, in 18 countries worldwide, by the military and by civilian authorities. Look, these are all of the countries. Trying to find them. These are 18 countries where the government or the military or civilian authorities have been dealing with this subject officially or unofficially. As you can see, some of them are marked in blue, some of them in this color, and some of them are underlined. And that is, the underlined countries are the most interesting ones, because this is where the UFO phenomenon has been dealt with by civilian authorities. Whereas in all the other countries, the UFO phenomenon has been dealt with by the military, classified, secret, and that is why the UFO phenomenon has never actually been, except for some exceptions, has never found its way to the scientific world, because scientists who want to deal with it, they cannot overcome the obstacle of secrecy, because it's secret. They don't have the facts. So it's only in 3 countries. And the blue countries are NATO partners, so NATO countries. So Germany has been a NATO member, an important member of the NATO actually, for quite some time now. So how come that Germany says that, UFOs don't exist, we don't deal with it? If even their NATO partners have been dealing with it and released their formerly secret UFO documents? So that's the first thing that you need to know. It's a worldwide phenomenon. The military worldwide has been dealing with it. That's the first thing. The second thing, which is important to know, though, is what is an unidentified flying object? Because most people believe that an unidentified flying object is some light in the sky that my grandma sees from her balcony, and she automatically thinks that, wow, there's a light in the sky, it must be an alien spaceship. This is not so. An unidentified flying object, and I think this is the definition from J. Allen Hynek. We are very happy to have a former member of his working staff here with us. Is something which cannot be attributed to any conventional explanation, even after careful examination by experts, civilian or military scientists. So it is something that has already been analyzed by scientists and still lacks any conventional explanation. And we are talking about cases with physical evidence, landing traces. We are talking about plants that have been altered in their composition. We talk about things that you can measure. There is a very important case in Great Britain, the Ransom Forest case. I was there a couple of months ago. I talked to the witnesses and visited the landing site. The military intelligence service took radiation readings at the landing site. Now, this is what I call physical evidence. These are things which really point to the reality of a true phenomenon. And then, okay, I have another 10 minutes, so I will jump over this video. Another thing that you have to know is that the military worldwide, not just the US military, but this is just an example, has been aware of the reality of a real phenomenon from the very beginning. This is a very important and very famous memo also. It's from the 1950s, written by the former head of US Joint Chiefs of Staff. So he was the highest ranking officer at all in the United States. So look what he wrote. He said, the phenomenon reported is something real, not visionary or fictitious. And he describes exactly what it looks like. Look here. metallic light reflecting surfaces, you know. And he goes on to describe the phenomenon. It's disc-shaped, domed on top, circular, look at point 3, circular or elliptical in shape, flat on the bottom and domed on top. But there are also, of course, many other forms of UFOs. They have been flying in formation, normally not associated with any sound, and so on. And look at this. What you see here is a radar trace of a UFO on Swiss military radar. I have this from a friend of mine who's head of MUFON Central Europe. I mean, he's the head of MUFON Europe. And he got this from the Swiss military. This is an unidentified flying object which was flying around over Switzerland with approximately 240 kilometers per hour, but it did not have a transponder signature. It did not have a transponder, you know? So the radio operators, the military radar operators, tried to find out what is this object. And while they were trying to find out what is this object, the object increased its speeds at Mach 4, and does a sharp right angle turn at Mach 4. Now, do you want to try this? I mean, you can hardly reach Mach 4 with your car on the highway. You can try it at 80 kilometers per hour, you know. What would happen if you try to drive a right angle turn with your car at 80 kilometers per hour? What would happen? You better don't try it, you know, because your car would crash, because there is something there's a natural law, mass inertia law, you know. The mass that you have set in motion wants to proceed in the direction that it took when you started the movement, so you cannot just change the direction at a right angle turn at 80 kilometers, let alone at Mach 4. So don't try this, you know, don't try this at home, don't try this in your car. You can recommend your neighbor that you don't like to do it, but you shouldn't do it yourself, honestly. So, how is it possible? This is against the natural laws of this planet that our mainstream science considers right. So how is that possible? Another thing you should know is that there are 1,423 real UFO cases in the sense of the definition I gave before. And when we talk about evidence and proof for the UFO phenomenon, you know, is it scientifically proven that there is a real UFO phenomenon? You have to consider or to think about the way we define a proof. What is a proof? You can, of course, do a mathematical proof. You can say 1 + 1 = 2, 2 - 1 = 1, quod erat demonstrandum. Yeah? So this is a mathematical proof that everybody can do. But you cannot just prove the existence of something, because a proof in the judicial criminal court trial, for example, can only be composed by, or can only be formed by a judge who has been authorized by some authority, by somebody who is entitled to be the judge, entitled to do to form the proof, and the judge takes the pieces of evidence, and he constructs, on the basis of these pieces of evidence, he constructs the proof, which is valid in court. So there is a problem, however, if nobody makes a trial, if nobody really engages in, you know, if there is no authority which really looks at the UFO evidence, then there can be nobody who can construct a valid proof. But in this case, it is scientifically proven, yes, because 4 national-sponsored research projects have been undertaken in this regard. So they have been entitled by the government. So they collected 1,423 cases which are true unidentified flying objects with physical landing traces and all of this. So it must be said very clearly that the existence of a real UFO phenomenon is scientifically proven. You should also know that Germany's neighboring country, France, has its own, it's one of the countries where UFOs are investigated by a civilian authority. It is investigated by the Centre National d'Études Spatiales, which is the French space agency, and it is a department of them, which is the group, the study, I have to say in French first, Groupe d'études et d'information sur les phénomènes aérospatiaux non identifiés. So it's the study and information group for unidentified aerial phenomena. It's a national authority, a national official body. And look, this is the number of cases they have published back in 2010. And this is a very interesting chart because you can see that they make a difference between phenomena which are perfectly identified. So somebody sees a light and they say, okay, that was a meteor, we found it out. So that's perfectly identified. Then they have the phenomena which are probably identified. They said most probably it was a meteor. Then they have this class C, it's 37%, phénomènes non identifiables par manque de données. So these are phenomena which are not identifiable because they have not enough data to analyze it and to find out what it was. And then there is a remaining fourth thing, and that is phénomènes non identifiés, the truly unidentified phenomena. But what's important to note, though, is that these phenomena are not classified as non-identified for lack of data, because they didn't have enough data, but because they did have all the data, because otherwise it would be this classification. They did have all the data, and it was still unidentified. And that's 22%, and the news chart shows 23%. And maybe you have heard of this report back in 1999. It's a 3-year military study of high-ranking French officials. Look, there are 3 generals. The foreword is actually written by the former director of the High Studies Institute for National Defense. So I don't know if I translated that correctly. It's the Institut des Hautes Études de Défense Nationale. Several pilots, civilian military pilots, the commander of the Gendarmerie Nationale. And they had this 3-year military report with the title, UFOs and the Defense, What Do We Have to Prepare For? So do you really believe that military experts would undertake a 3-year military study for a natural phenomenon, for sky lanterns or something? And they would call their report UFOs and the Defense. And these are some of their conclusions. Okay, that's going to be difficult. Translate from one foreign language into the other foreign language. These objects, or the phenomenon, shows the physical reality, the almost certain physical reality of flying objects which are completely unknown, with flight characteristics and remarkable sound characteristics, which are apparently driven or steered by intelligences. These flying objects are very impressive for their maneuvers, their flight maneuvers, for pilots, for civil pilots and military pilots who only speak about it very hesitantly because they fear that they will be ridiculed. Secret flight, secret craft of terrestrial origin can be excluded because they can only explain a minority of the cases, and there is only one hypothesis which takes sufficiently into account the facts and the science of nowadays, c'est celle des visiteurs extraterrestres. So the only hypothesis that these military experts consider valid for the UFO phenomenon after their 3-year military study is the hypothesis of extraterrestrial visitors. You should take this into account. They further go on to say the extraterrestrial hypothesis is by far the best scientific hypothesis. It is certainly not categorically proven, but there is strong evidence which point into this direction, and if they are correct, they have a great number of consequences. And they also recommend that the aims of these visitors, they are unknown, but they have to be included into the general discussion. So they say, we need to stop to ridicule this subject. It is real and we have to deal with it. So how come we don't know about it? I don't know what is the situation here in Portugal. I assume that in Portugal people are more open to this phenomenon because we are here at the university. So, you know, I think this would be really difficult in Germany. So how come we don't know about this? You should know that these are also files that were released by the British National Archive. You should know that the Central Intelligence Agency back in 1952 has already made plans how to deal with the UFO phenomenon. And there is a memo which analyzes the possibilities to use UFOs for their political aims. They say with the worldwide, and this is about the Soviet Union, they say we have not found any reports on UFOs in the Soviet press, which can only be due to the fact that the government is against reports in the press, and they say the question therefore arises as to whether or not these sightings could be controlled, could be predicted, or could be used from a psychological warfare point of view, either offensively or defensively. And they go on to state, the public concern with this phenomenon is reflected in the United States press, and it indicates that a fair portion of our population, so that many people do believe in the incredible, and in this fact lies the potential for the touching of a mass panic, mass hysteria and panic. So they were already aware back in 1952 that the UFO phenomenon is something that their political enemy could use against them by, you know, causing UFO sightings and then creating a mass hysteria and panic. And that is already in itself, for the Central Intelligence Agency, a good reason to keep it secret and to do something against it. And they did. In 1953, they commissioned this 3-day CIA-sponsored expert panel, and this expert panel by the CIA, you know, they analyzed all the data, 3 days, and they concluded that the continued emphasis on the reporting of these phenomena may result in a threat to the orderly functioning of the protective organs of the body politic. And they also say the national security agencies, that's what they recommend. They recommend that the national security agencies take immediate steps to strip the unidentified flying objects of the special status they have been given and the aura of mystery. And this may be achieved by an integrated program designed to reassure the public of the total lack of evidence. So there's no evidence, we just have to tell them, oh, there's no evidence, it's just natural phenomena, that's it. And that's the recommendation of the Robertson panel. And you might know this scientific study of unidentified flying object, it's an important study. This is the Americans back in 1969. The so-called, the Condon report. And the Condon report, this is Mr. Condon. Mr. Condon concluded that there's nothing that nothing has come from the studies of UFOs in the past 21 years that has added to scientific knowledge, and that this fact leads them to conclude that further extensive study of UFOs can probably not be justified because it is not of interest for science. You want me to ask you to show you the military radar traces again from Switzerland? How is it possible that an object can make a right angle turn at Mach 4? Is that not something which would be interesting for science, or what? And also you should know that the conclusion directly contradicts the data in the content report. There are some cases, there are also even cases described in there with right angle turns at high speed. So the conclusion is incongruent with the data. Okay, I'll leave that out. The former CIA director himself said that the Air Force is soberly concerned about UFOs, but through official secrecy and ridicule, citizens are led to believe the unknown flying objects are nonsense, and the Air Force, to hide the facts, has silenced its personnel. And this is from the New York Times, so I mean, this is a credible source. So the former CIA director himself said that the US Air Force has been ridiculing this subject. But it goes even further. Okay, good. I'll jump over this. The CIA has total control over mass media. There's a memo there which you can download on disclosureproject.org where they say that the Public Affairs Office of the CIA has relationships with reporters from every major wire service. And just note that the word every is highlighted even in the original report. Every major wire service, newspaper, Newsweekly, you know? And this has helped them to change stories which could have affected national security or jeopardized sources and methods. I'll jump over this. So that's the last point. I need another 3 minutes. Is that right? 3 minutes. How do we deal with the situation? A mass media is lying. It's not, well, it's at least not in the loop. They don't know anything. Our politicians don't know anything, or if they know something, they're either no real politicians or they've been bought or whatever. So how do we deal with this situation? UFOs have been ridiculed for 60 years now. How can we escape from this? I don't know. I can tell you what we do in Germany, okay? We have a website. What you see here is the website exopolitics.org with a K, that's German. That's my co-moderator, Anja, who's also present here, who has been helping me a lot. And thank you very much, Anja. What we're doing is we're doing a TV show, sort of TV show on the internet. We are presenting the facts as they are, and we say that they are facts. And when we talk about speculation, we say that it is speculation, which is important because there's so much speculation and nonsense in this field. You can actually exclude 95% of all the information in the public domain. It's, you know, it's disinformation, whatever. We also have an online community. This is a profile. Our citizen movement in Germany now has more than 2,000 members and more than 140 activists, and that has only been since August 2010. So it's very fast growing. And they can exchange their views there, and they can they can find information. They can, most importantly, they can find other people that they can talk to, because it's really difficult to find people who are informed enough to have an informed opinion. And why is it that this movement is so rapidly growing? I'm sorry, this is still in German. It says, important question for mankind. It is because, in the end, the question of extraterrestrials, yes or no, on Earth, is not so much about the extraterrestrials. It's about us as mankind. How do we deal with it? You know, this would be the biggest discovery in the history of the world. Just imagine that we discover that we are not alone. It would fundamentally revolutionize the whole way we think about ourselves, our place in the universe, the way our society is organized, the way we do politics. Just imagine a question, you know, from when there is a first contact, you know, people would start to ask themselves questions. How, you know, what is the tax rate on your planet? Oh, you don't have taxes? Oh, and why does your government on your planet have a war with? Oh, you don't have war, you know. And also, there's the whole question about technology, which I think Frederick is going to dive into. It's going to revolutionize everything, and it is time for us to engage in that process because the phenomenon is real. It's here. It's been ridiculed for 60 years. And it's time to deal with it. And my personal opinion about this is that the evolution of consciousness and life in the universe will not be stopped by some stubborn, power-driven politicians or people whatsoever on this planet who want to try to preserve their power position. It's time for mankind to engage this. And I want to invite you to think for yourself, to make your own opinion. Don't believe. Check for yourself. Thank you very much for your attention.